The divisional round preview show on the Pump Fake. Jarrett Bailey, joined by my head honcho over at Touchdown Wire, Doug Farrar. It's good to see you.
God help you.
It's always good to see you, though. How are you?
What's up? Yeah, I'm. I don't know what kind of boss I am, but you're killing it, man. You're killing it all over the place. You're like me in 2009, where I wound up with I think 5 different 1099s.
Yeah, tax time is going to be a bitch and a half, but
yes,
it's worth it in the end. But I appreciate the kind words. I've got a few more helmets since the last time you were on.
I see. I love the vintage Broncos. That's where I grew up, so I'm all into that.
Is it? I did not know.
Is that like AFL over there?
Yeah.
Sweet.
So that's from the 60s Oilers, I think.
Yeah, I have to dock you a few points for the Tiger Stripe Bengals instead of just the helmet. That was my favorite. And Bengals.
I was like so close.
Bengals, shut up.
So close to doing that. But that was actually a gift from one of my sisters because she said, "Hey, I need Christmas ideas." I was like, "I want mini helmets." She's like, "Okay, well, give me a list of which ones you want," and that was one of them. So the goal is to have like all 32 of some sort of vintage helmet. The closest thing to the Jaguars vintage or like throwback is that awful dual colored one with the mustard on the back. That's the one that's sitting right there, unfortunately.
I love those Ohio helmets, and Paul Brown came up with both of them, and he came up with the Browns because they were
hilarious.
And then he gets fired by Art Modell. Way to go, Art. He gets the Bengals in 68 and says, "Well, I can't have the least imaginative helmet of all time because I already did that. What's the second most boring? I'll just put freaking Bengals on it and, piss off."
And then I remember watching Mike Brown talk about that, like how I think it was Art Modell accused him of like stealing the design. He's like, "Well, who stole whose design now?" So it's
you painted a thing orange. I don't think that's a copyright issue.
There's like that picture too of Brown with like a bunch of different helmet concepts that look so much better, and he's just holding the Bengals one that just says Bengals. It's like a giant, like, yeah, I'm using this. Get over it.
Given Mike Brown, he was probably confused by the number of helmets he was looking at.
Maybe. But
we've got Bengals access for the rest of my life. Anyway.
Yeah. Anyway, I think I've still got an in. I'll shoot Ken Anderson a text and make sure that everything's good.
Hall of Fame snub, Ken Anderson, as far as I know.
Absolutely.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Midwest offense.
We got play of football to talk about.
We do. A lot of it.
The greatest weekend in football, the divisional round.
Age 8, baby.
First, what's the game? First game of the weekend. Houston Texans at Baltimore Ravens. These two played each other week 1.
Yep.
The Texans open as 9.5-point dogs. That seems a little bit hefty, but the Ravens are playing on basically 3 weeks of rest because they didn't play a lot of starters in week 18. Week 17 was whatever. But now, at home, Houston coming off a brilliant performance against a Browns defense that was heralded as, if not the best defense in football, one of the absolute best defenses in football this year, where C.J. Stroud looked phenomenal, going 16-21 and 3 touchdowns, tying the rookie record for touchdown passes in a playoff game. The defense had consecutive pick sixes. I love this matchup for a variety of reasons. For Houston, they aren't the same team that they were in week 1.
No. There's very little to gain from that week 1 game because it was Stroud's first NFL game. It was Slowick's first game as his OC. And there was preseason, but that doesn't really matter.
Sure.
And
you remember against the Patriots in the preseason, CJ Stroud threw a pick on his first drive, and everybody's like, "Oh no, they got the wrong guy."
Right. They look, yeah. But he threw 2 passes over 20 air yards. Didn't complete either one of them. Since week 2, he is the most prolific and most efficient deep passer in the NFL. Absolutely. And the Ravens, I wrote about this this morning in conjunction with the Cosell pod. That all the Ravens defenders are like, yeah, he's not that guy anymore. We're well aware. So they're on point with that. A number of interesting things. It's probably not a coincidence that the 2-1 seeds, Jarrett, do not have a specific coverage type.
And when Mike McDonald has been a king of just disguises and moving guys around, and he's turned Kyle Van Noy, like a bunch of different, I don't want to say bad players because they're not bad players, but it's not as if they're household names. He made Geno Stone have a really good year. Like he's
Clowney's best season by far. And where the hell was Justin Madubuike before this year?
Right.
And I'm like head of his fan club. His tape is preposterous. But they don't have a coverage type. If you go to the Browns game, and I wrote this before and after the game because it really kind of, like, what are you guys doing? They, Cleveland came into the game with the most single high in the heavy cover one, which is man coverage with a single high safety. Mm-hmm. Stroud has ripped that to shreds. He has demolished cover one, and they didn't change. They had 17 snaps at cover one, and in none of those snaps, and I watched them all. This is not me watching highlights and guesstimating. I watched every single one of those snaps. On none of those, it was a single high, no disguise, no late movement, no we're switching from 2 to 1, or we're going to cloud the picture. I found that astonishing. This will not happen in this game. Right. The Ravens will run single high coverage on 46.4% of their snaps this year, 2 high on 53.3, cover 3, cover 4, cover 1, and cover 6 in that order. You don't know what you're going to get from snap to snap. They do it all well, and they're very adept with coverage switches. Well, now the Niners, to spin it forward a little bit, they have run 50% single high, 50% 2 high. I don't think it's a coincidence, Jarrett, that the 2 1 seeds are very amorphous in their coverages. They don't give you one thing. And I think in today's NFL, as Jim Schwartz will spend the offseason kind of thinking about, you can't just say, hey, we can't go Legion of Boom and say, F you, we're just going to run cover 3 all day. Even if you have, I mean, honestly, even if the Seahawks did that now, they couldn't. Even if you have, 4 or 5 future Hall of Famers, one of the best defenses of all time, right. Even 2014, even 9 or 10 years ago, it was so different as far as what you present to the quarterback. Now, so the Ravens will present Stroud with all kinds of obstacles he has not seen before. That's one big thing. The other big thing, Texan defense, better than you think. Derek Stingley is a legitimate number 1 matchup corner.
According to Next Gen Stats,
Packers are kicking ass. They have a fantastic run defense. That's a fascinating matchup. The Texans' run defense against the Baltimore Ravens' run offense. This is not, 9.5. I wouldn't know. I think it's going to be close. I think it's going to be within a touchdown.
Yeah, according to Next Gen Stats, Stingley, I think he had 35 snaps against Amari Cooper, and he didn't allow a reception. Right. Jonathan Grenard has flown under the radar all season in terms of his sack production. He's played really well. Will Anderson played well on that side of the ball. One thing that did stand out to me for the Texans on defense, they've given up the most passing yards this season off play action. Guess who has been really good off play action this year? Lamar Jackson. So I expect Todd Monken to really lean into that. And if they can establish a run game early, then I'm a little bit worried about Houston. But I trust D'Amico Ryans to make those necessary adjustments when the time does come. Not having Tank Dell for Houston.
Their defense, they are heavy cover 4. The Texans defense, heavy cover 4, heavy cover 6. That's D'Amico Ryans. That's what he does. And Greg Cosell and I talked about this. We've talked a lot about 4 strong, where you have like trips or you motion to trips. Then the running back goes to that side. The Chiefs do this. The Packers did it for a touchdown against the Cowboys. When you have quarters, and it's what you think it is. Each of those back defenders has the responsibility of quarter the field. Well, if you cut the field in half and everyone's going 4 strong, it's 4 on 2. Just naturally, that's the way it is. So your defense is at a disadvantage. I would expect. And the Ravens do this too. Roll Lamar right. I don't know. I guess Mark Andrews isn't playing, but Likely's great as a tight end.
Sure.
4 strong, get that Moco Loco going, man. And it's just hard to defend if you prefer quarters. And more teams like the Texans are playing more quarters and more quarter half. So that's, I would say in a lot of these matchups, because the Niners do it too, the Packers do it too, watch in quarters for the offensive coordinators to load one side of the field with 4 potential receivers.
I do agree with you that this game is going to be within a touchdown, just because I believe in Stroud that much, and I think that he's proven that he is, in terms of the quote unquote next in line for being one of these top quarterbacks. He's not even next in line. He's already there.
He's there. He busted down the door in the last month or so when he was healthy, when he didn't have the concussion. If he didn't miss those 2 games with the concussion, he would have been a lot more in the MVP debate.
I was just about to bring that up. He played well enough where, who was it? I think it was a few people have, Ryan Clark, Orlovsky both said he might be the best rookie quarterback we've ever seen. And he was on pace to shatter a bunch of these passing yards record, passer rating record, but the concussion obviously prevented that. I'm only worried about the fact that, they don't have Tank Dell. I believe Noah Brown isn't playing in this game. So it's going to be Nico Collins or bust, seemingly. I mean, Xavier Hutchinson's going to have to really step up. They're going to need a lot of production from their depth at receiver.
Well, remember Dalton Schultz, and remember that Bobby Slowick comes from the Kyle Shanahan system all the way back to Washington. Well, what does Kyle do? What does Mike McDaniel do in Miami? What does Slowick do? Explosive plays out of heavy personnel. A lot of 13. A lot of 3 tight ends. The 75-yard bomb to Collins, that was at a 13 personnel. Collins was the only receiver. He ran that post from the left side. He was the only receiver on the field. 3 tight ends to the right. And I think they did run action. So
yeah, they play action on the first play.
Oh shit, we don't know where we're going. But that's so. Yes, it would be better. Woods played last week, I believe.
Bobby Trees.
Bobby Trees. So yeah, it would be awesome. 2 guys in this game that I really wish were there was Tank Dell and Keaton Mitchell, the Ravens, because I loved him in college and he was just balling out. But anyway, so I would expect a lot of 13. I would expect a lot of motion. The Ravens, they're disciplined. They don't throw a lot of crazy stuff at you. It's just everyone's in the right place. And when they do blitz, it generally works with Kyle Hamilton or other people. And the linebackers are so sound. It's, so it's not a passive defense, but they are going to try and bait Stroud into making mistakes. That could be the key to the game. And I don't know how many mistakes he's going to make because the guy just doesn't make them.
Yeah.
Last time I saw a rookie with this sort of understanding was Andrew Luck.
He only threw 5 picks during the regular season.
I think so.
And I think 2 of them came against the Cardinals. So, I mean, in terms of interceptions per game, he's played fantastic and he's done a good job.
Gannon will throw some funky, effective stuff at you, as the Eagles discovered this year.
Moving on,
pencil in my ear for that, shouldn't I? Here we go.
You should, yeah, you should. We should have both done Matt Patricia cosplay. That would have been a lot of fun.
Fake beard and run shitty man coverage.
Absolutely. Cool.
Nice.
The Packers and 49ers are the second Saturday game. Green Bay also opens up as 9.5-point dogs. I kind of feel the opposite about this game in terms of how I felt about Houston. I think that Jordan Love and the Packers offense are going to work like hell to keep them in it. I think even early on, like if they make like a splash play, like if they get the ball first and they score, I think everybody's gonna be like, oh my goodness, here it comes.
And little Packers, aren't they?
And then Kyle Shanahan's gonna say, oh, that's cute. Here it comes. Watch this.
Well, you know what the business is. We have to generate interest. We have to make it sound like more than it is. And Joe Barry's defense, they're getting some guys back. They've been actually quite a bit more effective in the last 2 weeks of the regular season and in the playoff game, because Dak had big numbers, but it was all when the game was basically over, and the Packers were like putting UPS drivers on the field on defense.
There's a large difference between the defense getting better against a Mike McCarthy coach team than a Kyle Shanahan.
Well, I was going to say your article on the Packers' young weapons this morning that we put up on Touch Wire was excellent. You said there's a bit of a difference between Mike McCarthy offense and Kyle Shanahan. I thought that was very generous of you to say that.
Yeah, no, I was the part of saying there's a little difference. I was doing a lot of heavy lifting in terms of the difference between Kyle Shanahan and Mike McCarthy.
And that defensive improvement was against the Vikings and their 12th quarterback, the Bears, God only knows, and the Cowboys just McCarthying their way out of the playoffs. So they've played the 5th most single high coverage in the league.
They've also only blitzed on 22.4% of dropbacks. That's near the bottom of the league. They remind me a little bit. You can correct me if I'm wrong. A little bit of their style of play reminds me a little bit of the Ed Donatel Vikings of last year, where they're not going to pressure you because they can't. They have to play conservative.
They're a little more interesting. Ed was coming out of the Ray Rhodes 1994 playbook, which was bad.
Right.
But their game plan is focused more on coverage than pressure. I think Greg was telling me, God, Prescott had 70 dropbacks. Jesus. They rushed 5 or more on 9 of Prescott's 70 dropbacks.
Absurd.
So that was a function of it. They've got a good front. Their front has been good all year. The linebackers are weird. I think their secondary is coming together. And all of that is to say they're going to get boat raced.
Yeah, because if you look at their how effective they've been in terms of preventing the deep balls, they've been one of the best deep ball preventers in the league this year. But It's the underneath stuff that I worry about with all these shallow windbreakers. And, if Debo gets it, can turn 8 into 20. If Brandon Ayuk gets it, he can turn 11 into 30. Like, that's the biggest worry for me about the Packers going up against the number one offense in the league in San Francisco.
And it's a really specific problem against Brock Purdy, because two things Brock Purdy does exceptionally well for such a young quarterback is if you try and do all that disguise and late movement stuff, he'll be like, okay, you got that sonar. I know what you're actually doing, guys. I know it's going to be cover one, robber, or whatever. You can move your guys around all you want. You're just making them tired. The other thing is he's such a good short to intermediate to deep anticipation thrower. It's not just like, oh, I got a guy open on a slant and an RPO, so I'm going to throw it here. Or Jalen Hurts, I'm going to throw it 3 steps behind him. I don't know how many times this year I would be looking at Niners tape and watching Debo or Ayuk or even Kittle running like an in cut or, some kind of dagger thing where he had a guy coming over the middle and he would throw it into tight coverage before the receiver even made his cut. And it would be like right in there, and not just right in there, wide ass open, right in there. Right. Like the cornerback's hand is right here. I'm trying to catch the ball. And when I was 10 yards away, Purdy started his throw and it was perfect. So he's we can talk about the machinations of that offense and all the receivers and that, 5 guys that can line up anywhere and kick your ass. And that's all great, but none of that works without Purdy. And I would say that of all the quarterbacks Kyle Shanahan has ever had, he is the most perfect distiller of what Kyle wants to do on offense that Kyle's ever had. And I think, when he came in last year, one of the first things Kyle said about what's different with Purdy over Garoppolo, and Kyle wasn't shy about it. He said, well, now we have a deep passing game. And they're a vertical passing game. They like to run outside. They like to hit you between the numbers, between the seams even. And a lot of that is that when we get to Jared Goff, we'll talk about those in breakers, but Goff is awesome at. But, you need those anticipation throws to have a successful vertical intermediate offense and passing game, and they've got that.
I can see this game going very similar to how Seahawks 49ers went last year in the playoffs, where Seattle keeps it close in the first half. Everybody's like, okay, all right, Seattle, we see you. And then in the second half, I could see the 49ers winning like 39 to like 20, something crazy.
It's like one of those exhibition boxing matches, like when in Rocky 1, when they're kind of dancing around and Rocky hits Creed and knocks him down for the first time in Creed's career. And Creed's like, oh yeah, now I'm going to start the haymakers.
Right.
Kind of like
going to the Sunday games, I was watching Aaron Schatz and Mike Tanier on the FTN.
My guys.
Today. Absolutely. Love them to death. Aaron Schatz is like, by the way, don't forget that this game's happening because no one seems to care about Buccaneers Lions.
I care. Dang it.
Absolutely. The Buccaneers, 6.5-point dogs coming off, which is a slaughter of the Philadelphia Eagles, where Baker Mayfield became the first Buccaneers quarterback in history to throw for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns in a playoff game. Crazy. I think that's how Brady never did that.
That's
apparently
fascinating. That Brady,
right? That's what I was saying. I could have.
God, between him and Trent Dilfer, jeez.
Yeah, I mean, the two of the finest playoff quarterbacks I've ever seen.
Johnson. I'm sorry, I was confusing my early 2000s bad placeholder quarterbacks for Super Bowl winners. My apologies.
Dilfer was drafted by the Bucs, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was.
Yeah, they've still have the creamsicle uniforms. I think his rookie year. Yeah.
So was Steve Young. There you go.
Yeah. Buccaneers have always had apparently a lovely eye for quarterbacks. The Detroit Lions coming off of by far the most competitive game of Wild Card Weekend, where they sent their former quarterback Matthew Stafford packing. The difference in that game was the Lions finished in the end zone when they got to the red zone, and the Rams settled for field goals a lot.
Yep.
And the Lions got their stars involved early and often. Like for Detroit, they're so fascinating to me because you know who's going to kill you, and they don't care that they are still going to do it.
No. Well, I found it fascinating the last functional play of that game, and Dan Campbell saying after the game in the locker room, "Hey, Jared Goff, you're good enough for F in Detroit." It's nice when coaches say that, but you remember before the 3 kneel downs, they had to get a first down to end the game, and they didn't run the ball. They said, "All right, Jared, we're going to trust you to hit St. Brown on the little slant," and that's so. Coaches will say a lot of things. They will tell you what they really think of their players by what those players are allowed to do on the field. Goff is absolutely dialed in, and this is a tale of 2 quarterbacks. These are my notes. Going back to the week 6 game. Mayfield completed 19 of 37 passes for 206 yards, no touchdowns, 1 interception, and a passer rating of 56.8. His
Not
worst
great.
game of the season. He was frequently, this was like all the bad Baker stuff mixed into one game. He speeding up in the pocket when he was hurried or not, didn't throw with good base fundamentals, and he threw off platform more than he needed to, which led to a lot of incompletions against tight coverage. There's a wide open shot he had to Trey Palmer with 2 minutes left in the first half that he overthrew by a couple yards. Would have been an easy touchdown. And that was a deep over from the slot against cover 4. Palmer just, because Palmer's their best vertical guy, beat Kirby Joseph over the top. That was done. He was pressured on 13 of his 41 dropbacks in that game, completed 2 of 10 passes for 17 yards and a sack. He is better in all of those ways than he was in that game. And he's really come on lately, but that's something to watch. And that's one side of the ball. The other side of the ball is Todd Bowles threw everything he possibly could at Goff, and Goff just went, yep, okay. Let's 5 or more rushers. You know how many times against 5 or more rushers Goff threw the ball? 16. You know how many he completed?
If you say 16, I'm going to be a little bit surprised. That's absurd.
16 against 5 or more edge rushers.
Goodness gracious.
6 or more, 3 of 3. So, and when we say blitz, you know, I want to differentiate between like 5-man fronts, like a bear front. That's not a blitz.
Right.
Like a 4-man front with a linebacker or a safety. If you're sending 5 guys and one of those guys is a non-lineman, specifically against a quarterback, not a mush or a zone exchange. But
not running that, you know, that old Bears look, basically.
Right. So, and you know, and a lot of single had too high looks, and they kind of did the same thing over and over. But every time they did that, Goff just went, "Oh, that's cute," bang. So, based on week 6, the quarterback advantage is not decisively, murderously in Detroit's advantage. Now, Baker's played well. But there's that little kind of oddly coiled spring in the machine that you just never know. And I'm the biggest Baker stan of all time. Have been since
you are.
I love him. I love random quarterbacks. We all have these sort of like I love short defensive tackles. I love random quarterbacks. I love big safeties. I don't know. I'm just weird.
I think Baker Mayfield is how do I best describe Baker Mayfield? He is what would happen if like Jeff George panned out. Does that make sense? Like in terms of their personalities, that's who he reminds me of.
He's a tough guy. He's a hard worker. His teammates in any of his stops will tell you that he's not what he seems. He's not this jackass. He's really, you know, he just but you know, 16 of 16 on 5 or more rushers, more screens. And this is something because when the Bucs do blitz, they'll also frequently drop their linebackers. And over and over and over, if it wasn't a screen, it was the void between the line and the linebackers. There was always a crosser or a mesh or someone coming in, you know, linebacker on a release route. By the way, Jahmyr Gibbs didn't play in that game and he's playing in this one. So hello.
I don't think Brian Branch played in that game either.
Maybe not. And that guy's good too, but
he's terrific.
You know, Bowles really has to watch out. I would play this more static if I were him. You can't get tricky with Goff. Say what you want about Goff. Above the neck, he's as good as anyone, and he really he kicked their ass. And Bowles had one of his most creative games of the season. It just didn't matter.
I think that there was a worry about the Lions at one point this year, like around Thanksgiving when they lose to Green Bay and then they take that big lead against New Orleans and then the Saints almost come back and then they lose by 2 scores to Chicago. I think everybody's like, okay, what the hell are the Lions? Like, are they really going to be this team? And then, you know, they finish off the year really strong. You know, they beat the hell out of Denver. They beat Minnesota. They should have beat Dallas. And I think that wild card weekend was the best long-term booking of ball don't lie for that game. You know, just looking at how things went for Dallas and how they went for Detroit, and then they beat Minnesota, and then now coming off the win against the Rams. Just offensively, we know how good Detroit is in terms of their play calling and in terms of their personnel. Sam Laporta has been an all-pro caliber tight end this season. You know, that Montgomery and Gibbs. I think I don't know who did it. I think it might have been NFL Fashion Advice who called Gibbs and Montgomery Sonic and Knuckles, and I thought that was a fun little nickname for them.
By the way, real quick, and this doesn't surprise me, that offensive sort of lull was about the time that center Frank Ragnow was inactive.
Ah,
that's a
that
lot.
does make sense.
That's probably the best center in the league.
Yeah, absolutely. Defensively, though, they have gotten so much better since last year, where they were in the bottom of the league in nearly every defensive category. I'd have to go and look. Detroit, I mean, yes. Yeah. And they've had so many different guys. Obviously, Aleem McNeil has been a big part of that. Aiden Hutchinson's played really well. Like Kirby Joseph on the back end. They spent a lot of money in the secondary, but I think it was more the front four that was the biggest story of their defense this year, just really stepping up.
Yeah, they're playing well at linebacker, and they'll run five-man fronts or blitzes with Jack Campbell, who's a two-level guy. This is like we call Micah Parsons a linebacker, and he plays 2 snaps at linebacker. Campbell will play linebacker, and then when he's an edge in the five-man fronts, they have Anzalone, and they'll bring in other guys to cover that. Yeah, injuries have not helped. Gardner Johnson
is
back and mouthing off about guys who weren't on the field all season.
That was so fun. That just goes back to Baker Mayfield, where he's just like, Russell Gage hasn't played for us this year. Maybe you should watch a little bit more tape, pal.
Yeah. So injuries have made them a little corner light. It's good that Gardner Johnson, because all joking aside, he's a really good player.
He's very good.
But that is where they can be attacked. They cannot be attacked in the run game. Now, the Buccaneers have a volume run game, but I don't think they're going to. Neither one of these, because when you look at the Bucs, they got Vita Vea and now Kalijah Kancey, who, oh my God, the way he played against the Eagles, he had one run stop for 0 yards where he did 2 jump cuts. Like
that was the thing with him.
Literal Kenneth Walker jump cuts. Like, how in the hell do you do that?
That was the big thing about him coming into the league. It was like, okay, this dude's a freak and he's fast and he's athletic and he's definitely shown up for them.
Even with Gibbs playing, I would not expect either team to be really successful in their run games.
I'm excited about this game. I think it has a chance
I'm very excited about this game because you got Ben Johnson and Dave Canales, 2 of the best OCs in the league.
Absolutely.
It's going to be really cool.
It'll be fun.
Just fun. Schematically fun.
Now the meat and potatoes of the weekend. Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen meet again in the playoffs. First time in Buffalo. The Bills did rule out several players, including no Gabe Davis, no Taylor Rapp, no Balin Spector. To be determined on Terrell Bernard. Sean McDermott said that he hasn't ruled him out yet. He's basically going to be a game time decision by the sounds of it. If they don't have Terrell Bernard, I'm worried if I'm the Bills. Because
questionable yesterday were Benford and Rasul Douglas and Teron Johnson.
Christian Benford also ruled out, by the way, so no Christian Benford.
Geez.
Yeah. So they're really going to have to lean on.
So they got to put Johnson outside then.
Unless they bring back Kyrie Elam again. And
yeah, it could be.
So if they want to keep Johnson in the slot, keep Kyrie Elam on the outside to, be able to balance with Rasul Douglas, then cool. But even if that's the case, like I'm very worried if there's no Terrell Bernard there, because then Travis Kelce is going to be like, okay, I'm going to have 14 catches on 18 targets, and there's nothing we can do to stop me.
We say that every other year, but
I guess so.
Never underestimate the power to revert when Matt Nagy's running your offense.
You know what? I think that is the great equalizer in this game. Yes. Like, if that's the case,
it's like never like play cards against a guy with the name of a city and all the other. Like, never trust. Never mind. It's early. I need more coffee. Anyway, resume. I don't even know. I didn't even know where I was going there.
I don't either. But you seemed. I was going to let you take control there for a minute.
Yeah, I veered right off the road.
I will say this about the Chiefs. Obviously, their offense hasn't been what we've been accustomed to over the past few years, but in the final few weeks of the regular season and then last week against Miami, they've really leaned into, okay, Rashee Rice, you're going to be our offense, and if we can get you the ball intermediate over the middle, we're going to do that more, and they have done that more. The thing with them that, will continue to worry me is, is it going to come down to Marquez Valdes-Scantling having to make a play? Is it going to come down to Kadarius Toney? Is it like if neither team can run the ball well? Because I think going into last week, the thing with the Bills defense was we're not going to let the Steelers run the ball. They've been running the ball really well. We're not going to let them. We'll make the skill guys beat us. We'll make Mason Rudolph beat us. Obviously, there's a large difference between Patrick Mahomes and Mason Rudolph, but there is also a great discrepancy with the Chiefs skill position guys right now. The Chiefs are 2.5-point dogs. You couldn't pay me to bet on this game in terms of the spread. I have no idea where this is going to go.
Well, it could be the same weather. Orchard Park was basically closed. There's supposed to be another lake snow event this weekend.
I think they're calling for 17 degrees is the expected game time temperature. I don't know about the snow.
17 with no wind is fine. 17 with wind is like
that's going to suck.
Travis Kelce was on with, of course, Jason Kelce on the New Heights podcast. He was saying when it's cold like that, it's like you can't even function. You just you go on autopilot, and it doesn't matter when it's so cold that the wind or no wind doesn't matter. It makes everything very different for you.
Right.
It's kind of a non-functional football game where you're just trying to survive it.
And for them, this has got to feel like a summertime change going from minus 30 to 17. Yeah. They're going to be out there, flip-flops, and it's going to be a beach party in Orchard Park.
Someone's going to go out there with like a wife beater on pre-game, and then why can't I feel my arms? Jeez, I don't know.
Anyway. I think the thing with the Bills, though, too, is they've leaned more into their run game since Joe Brady took over as offensive coordinator. James Cook quietly one of the I can't remember where. I think he finished third in terms of total scrimmage yards behind Christian McCaffrey and Tyreek Hill. At least he was there at one point.
This is another team since Brady took over. They run a lot of 4-strong. That 4-strong thing I was talking about. Now Spags plays a lot of too high. He's very amorphous. You never know. And by the way, that defense, if it wasn't for Spags, I don't think the Chiefs would be in the playoffs at all.
It's been such an influx for them, or an inverse of what we've been accustomed to. And it's a credit to Brett Veach and the entire front office, because you look at all these guys of Snead, McDuffie, Karlaftis, like these are all homegrown guys.
Well, they went young a couple of years ago with a purpose, and it's really panned out.
It absolutely has. And now I think one of the key factors, maybe the key factor, is how effectively can the Bills run the ball? Because the Chiefs have been really good at shutting down receivers this year. I think they've only allowed 2 number one receivers to have 100 yards receiving, and there were 2 receivers in general to have 100 yards receiving. It was Josh Palmer, and who's the other one? The other one's escaping me in terms of who had 100 yards against them. I think it might have been Keenan Allen. But regardless, they've been terrific against the pass. Matt Verderam, who big Chiefs guy over at SI, he was on the show earlier in the week.
What was SI?
Sure. He was talking to me earlier in the week. He's like, I promise you, Josh Allen is not like, this is not going to be a game where a lot of passing yards happen. I think it's going to be a really low scoring game.
He did not play well in week 14. They had him mystified. And the thing about L'Jarius Sneed, who is their top corner, they have a lot of good young defenders. Their linebackers are very smart. Safety is good. Reed has been really good. But Sneed, he is a number one matchup corner. He forced incompletions in the second half to 5 different Dolphins receivers, which you don't usually see. And he's a traveler. He will play left, right, and right slot. So it's not like, we can move away from him. The other thing, and I've talked to Greg about this a number of times, and he said it, and it was one thing where someone says something, you're like, I got to look that up and start watching some tape. I think it's true. We think of Stephon Diggs, great receiver, but we think of him as a guy who can, test you at the second and third levels. He's not really that guy anymore. Outside of Hardy, who's kind of a speed merchant kick returner guy, they don't really have anyone else. And the only guy who caught a deep pass from Josh Allen in week 14 was Hardy. He's really the only guy I need to worry about at like the third level. So Spags can do his coverage, can do his weird blitzing stuff. And, that's what he did in week 14. And they weren't really prepared with answers for that. Now, that was right around the time of the OC switch, but it's not like the Bills are that much different. I mean, they run the ball a little bit more, it's better, but it's not like, oh my God, we're watching the tape from last week and we don't even know what the hell we're looking at. It's pretty similar because you have the guys you have. Right. The O-line, disadvantaged Bills, receivers, possibly disadvantaged Bills, certainly against Snead. I would say running backs are a push. I love Pacheco. He just runs like he is a nasty, angry guy.
I love all the analogies that people make on Twitter about the way he runs. Like I saw somebody say like Isaiah Pacheco runs like he just got new shoes and he's trying to break them in. That one made me laugh. Like just so many different, just angry runner. He's very good.
Marshawn Lynch approved. So I wouldn't bet on the. I don't bet on sports because I suck at it, but I would not bet on this game for anything.
And you brought up Stephon Diggs. He was in a lull for about a month. Starting really with that Kansas City game in week 14, 4 catches, 24 yards. The next week against Dallas, 4 catches, 48 yards. Granted, they ran for 1 trillion yards, so they weren't really looking to throw the ball, so that's fine. Against the Chargers, 5 catches, 29 yards. That was a game that Gabe Davis had like 8 catches for like $130 or something crazy like that, where he just went
against
off.
Your real garbage defense, and it's like, you're throwing to Davis instead of Stroud. That's it. Or Davis instead of God. Diggs. A lot of stuff in my head today.
It's okay. And then against New England, he had 4 catches for 26 yards. So that is 4 consecutive games of 5 or fewer catches, 4 consecutive games of 48 or fewer yards. He broke out against Miami, had 7 for 87, and against Pittsburgh had 7 for 52. Not having Gabe Davis, who he's been a Chiefs killer in the past, and when he's on, he's on.
Yeah.
He's also a good run blocker. They're gonna have to rely on Trent Sherfield a little bit more for that this week. I really don't know where to lean with this. I'm leaning
Chiefs. Yeah, I'm leaning Chiefs for 2 reasons. The touchdown pass to Rashee Rice against the Dolphins, where they ran sort of a mesh and sort of clear out crossers. And it was the first really creative thing I'd seen the Chiefs do in the passing game for like 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
And it was set up by, I'll be writing about this week. The first pass Mahomes threw, which was also an 11-yard throw, this time to Kelsey, where they kind of did the same thing and they got the tendencies and they went, oh, we can do this again. So a little more creativity, pack that with the Bills' injuries.
Yeah.
It's not weather advantage for either team. I think the Chiefs pull it out close.
I think the Josh Allen boy
like Matt Milano was there and Tre'Davious and Rasul Douglas came over, and I've always liked Rasul Douglas. He's been so good for them this year.
He's been a giant game changer.
Everyone healthy, I might say Bills by a touchdown because I have no faith in the Chiefs offense at all. But I think where things are, Josh Allen doing Josh Allen things, Mahomes doing Mahomes things. I think we know how that's always sort of turned out.
I think the inner Josh Allen boy in me just really wants to finally see them get over that hump, especially like it's in Buffalo now. Sure. Like you've got the crowd behind you for the first time in the playoffs against these guys. Like if they can't beat this iteration, I understand the injuries and whatnot, but if they can't beat this iteration of the Chiefs, I think that there's going to that's a funeral if they lose that game. That is
that might be consequences and ramifications thereof, sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think as well, whoever wins this game is representing the AFC in the Super Bowl.
Could be. Wait. Oh, really?
I think so. I
think Baltimore's the best team in football.
I think that there's something to say for if the Chiefs get there, obviously, to the AFC Championship game, I'm not going to be surprised whatsoever just because they've done it for 5 straight years now. It won't surprise me. Yeah. And I think there's something to, whoever wins this is going to be really feeling themselves. And it's just that, unstoppable object meeting, an immovable force or whatever the hell the analogy is. But I think, whoever wins this, in my opinion, I think comes out of the AFC.
I think the Ravens are going to be waiting for either team that is feeling themselves like Paulie and Goodfellas. Paulie didn't move because Paulie didn't have to. Paulie was already number 1. He's just cigar. All right. Hi, guys. Let's go.
Terrific analogy. Top 5 movie for
better than my last one. Jesus.
Hey, it's a good rebound. Great.
It
rebound.
Was from The Princess Bride. Never go, when death is on the line. Whatever. Just never have Matt Nagy call your offense. I could just simplify it to that.
I've never seen. Is Andre the Giant in The Princess Bride?
Yep.
Is that the movie?
Oh, you've never seen The Princess Bride?
I've never seen The Princess Bride. No.
Oh, wow! You need to do that.
I might. I'm
more aware of it. Says it's great, but it's one of those movies where everyone says it's great and it actually is.
I'm only really super aware of it because I'm a wrestling nerd and there's so many Andre stories on set there.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah.
All right. Is it streaming anywhere? Should I actively seek it out?
You should seek it out.
Okay, I might make that.
If you're just jittery waiting for the games to start because they're later games, give it a shot.
So, a Saturday morning Princess Bride watch.
I would say, yeah. I would say.
Good stuff. All right, Doug Farrar, what do you got coming on Touchdown Wire?
All kinds of tape stuff from the podcast of Greg Cosell, which went up yesterday and is streaming on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and blowing up on YouTube. Thanks, everyone. Engagements are improving, and we like that. And then obviously, Barry Warner will be doing all sorts of stuff in game. Jarrett has a piece on the Packers, which is outstanding. I don't know if we're going to do power rankings because there'd be 4 teams.
Yeah, I mean, there's only going to be 4 teams left. I was going to ask you about that if you
we'll figure out something else.
Okay, lovely.
Yeah, Jarrett's working on something else that I will not have time to do, so I hand it off to him like any shitty editor would, and that's going to be fun.
Yeah, so go check out my my Packers piece. If you like the movie Young Guns, you'll like the piece a lot. And then
I had Blaze of Glory by Bon Jovi in my head for 2 hours.
Yeah, I know
that at all.
That's the movie that plays at the end of Young Guns 2. That's why I used it.
Yeah. You have to understand. I have been a musician most of my life. I have music in my head all the time. Seriously, there's a name for it, and that was 2 hours of that. I had to Metallica my way out of that one, my friend. You're welcome. Yeah, I'm not like the biggest Bon Jovi guy, but I loved that song just because my dad and I used to watch Young Guns 2 a lot when I was a kid, and I would always play at the end. So nice. Big fan of that, and a big fan of you, my friend. I always appreciate you giving me some time. Appreciate everybody for listening. We'll be back after the Divisional Round of Preview Conference Championship weekend. Doug Farrar, I appreciate you, my friend. Thank you to everybody for listening, and we'll see you next week.